So there is definitely some exciting things going on in the independent comic space. So Eric July posted um a preview to a video that's going to be aired tomorrow at 6 p.m. Well, not a really a preview, the thumbnail to the video. It'll, like I said, premiere tomorrow. And it says a new legend has appeared. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that there's a big industry legend uh, joining the Rippaverse? Is it a mid-tier industry legend? I mean, Chuck Dixon is pretty big, and he's writing Alpha Core, Joe Bennett on the art. I cannot wait to see that book. I think it's going to be great personally. Um, my humble opinion, everything the Rippaverse has put out so far, I have enjoyed. I know people have their gripes. Was it a perfect rollout? No, not going to rehash all of that. Anyway, so I have, let's say, a theory, a guess. My guess can be completely wrong. I have no inside knowledge. But on the heels of seeing that, I open up Bounding Into Comics and I see this article. And my brain got to going as soon as I saw the article, especially with the title of the article. So I'm going to go to this Bounding Into Comics article. It says former DC Comics publisher Dan DiDio explains why woke ideology is rampant in comics. Unless you've been under a rock, we all see it. Woke ideology has taken over mainstream comics. It's pervasive. It's through many comic books, and there's very few comic books that it has not touched. Some have less. Some you can pick up and you see it, but it would be manageable. And in some comic books, it's just like, I cannot read this. This is not good. But I thought it was interesting to see him say this. So I guess it was in an interview he had with John De La Raz. So here's what he says. I'm just going to get into the article. It was written by John F. Trent. Former DC Comics publisher Dan DiDio recently shared his thoughts on why he believes that woke ideology is rampant within in the comic book industry, specifically at DC and Marvel Comics. And like I said, unless you're living under a rock, you know this. Now, I'm not going to rage and go crazy about this. You know my my stick on this channel. I'm not trying to produce rage content, but I'm also not going to turn a blind eye like I don't know what's going on in comic books. We all see this and we all know this is definitely going on. He says, speaking with Bounding Into Comics contributor John De La Raz on his YouTube channel, DiDio broached the subject while promoting his series, Ancient Enemy series. DiDio stated, quote, I used to use an expression that I put in Ancient Enemies. I used to say corporations don't have values, corporations have profits. So, the only time they have values is they think it's going to add to their profits. And I believe I can agree with him here. Corporations typically don't really have an alignment. Their alignment is what is going to add the most revenue, and that's where they align. And for many years, the woke ideology has pushed its way into comic books little by little until it's infiltrated every space. And they've been making money, but I think they made a gross miscalculation as the push for woke ideology has reached its apex. It has affected stories in such a way that they're barely manageable. There are still some good stories within both Marvel and DC, but there's not a lot of them. And that's definitely a problem for a comic book company or two comic book companies that are trying to sell books and make money. because it's rare that you pick up a Marvel comic or a DC comic and you're like, oh, this is actually really good. It happens, but it's few and far between. It's hit or miss. More misses than hits. He goes on to say, quote, so when people start to talk about what a company stands for, a company stands for money. Very true. If you open a company and you're not in the business to make money, well, then you'll be out of business at some point. Now, there is a balance. You can both produce good content and make money. You don't have to shove ideas down people's throats in order to make money. He goes on to say, that's all they ever do. If you ever think anything more, then you're misguided. I would agree completely. They present themselves differently, he elaborated. Look, companies are in the business of making money. I don't know of a person that started a company and thought, oh, I'm just going to be broke. Now, there are different people who start companies for more noble causes, but even those people understand in order to keep this thing going, I have to make revenue. If I don't make revenue, I don't get to keep this thing going and do or execute whatever noble plan I have. You got to make money. He goes on to say, specifically referring to the story of ancient enemies, he said, what I like to do is pull back the veneer just to make that when we see the people inside, just to make it that when we see the people, I think that's what they want to say, inside the company, while they're talking quietly amongst themselves, they understand exactly what their purpose is, even if everybody else is seeing them for something else. It's smoke and mirrors. You might believe a company is for one thing, and the bottom line is they're for whatever is going to bring the most money to their pockets. I think that's kind of obvious. Maybe to some it's not, but I think to most people it's obvious. Del Raz would follow up on Didio's comments asking him, well, there's a lot of hullabaloo about that, and there's so much political, cultural war crap going on in comics. Now too, with finger pointing and all. Excuse me for my terrible reading right here. Sometime reading some of these articles, I think there's certain words that are missed or things just are worded weird, and then it catches me up as I'm reading. Do you attribute most of that on the corporate level, then to incompetence when stuff starts to slide in that direction? Like it's not intentional, or it's just a few people really loud and they get the attention. You know the saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. Didio responds, I think it's a few people loud and a lot of people chasing something they don't know. I think I can agree with him here. I think there are many people who run these big comic book content houses that don't necessarily understand what exactly they have. Like they probably didn't grow up reading comic books. They don't really understand the medium. They don't know what geeks really want to see. And they think geeks, look, even if it's an idea I happen to agree with, I just want a good storyline. And I think what makes these storylines bad is you have people that use comic books as their whipping posts. Like, I'm going to whip my readers into shape and make sure they believe what I believe. But that doesn't work. This is not what I came to this comic book for. I want entertainment. I want a good story. I want good art. The one thing that you find out in the corporate world very quickly is most of the people that work and produce things don't know anything about what they produce. And this is so true. You know, one of the reasons why I believe Jon Favreau has been so successful in things like The Mandalorian and the first Iron Man movie is he's a true geek. Like, he really is a geek. This is, not a game to him. He doesn't want to destroy the very things that he loved. he wants to bring something to the silver screen that he would have loved when he was young and coming up with these same characters. And I think that's what makes him a good asset to Marvel and Star Wars. Now, they're definitely, in my humble opinion, not using him till his full potential. And I believe, now I don't know this for a fact, but I believe Kathleen Kennedy may have done a lot to get in his way. I don't have any inside knowledge. I know what I've read. And for all intents and purposes, it seems like these accounts are true. And that's exactly what happened. Kathleen Kennedy has gotten in his way. But again, I have no firsthand knowledge. So this is just based off all the reporting that I've read. They're not consumers of their own product, and that is a problem. So where do they get their information on how their product is succeeding or failing? And this is a good question. I wonder this. I wonder how the CEO of any one of these companies can look at the stuff that they're producing and look at the lack of enthusiasm among fans for the things they put out and come to the conclusion that, yes, this is the way to go. It's odd to me. It's really odd. Here's another quote. They go online now. They're pulling information from these websites and conversations. He answered his own rhetorical question. So what you have now, is you have them picking up the most dichotomous points of view and ultimately aligning with then which one. That read completely crazy. Let me read that one more time. So what you have now is you have them picking up the most dichotomous points of view and ultimately aligning with then which one they want to believe the most. So they're aligning with whatever they want to believe is true. Again, sometimes these articles are worded slightly strange and it catches me up, and it might just be me. I'm not going to say it's the editor. It may just be I'm not all there when it comes to reading. Okay. And then using that sense to basically validate the choices they're making inside the product, whether it needs it or not. So they're in an echo chamber. And in this echo chamber, they have people speaking back to them saying, yes, this is great. A few people online, which it might seem like it's scores of people. Let's say 1,000 people online tell you that this thing you did was great and it's magnificent and it's awesome. But that's only 1,000 people. If you have, let's take Marvel, millions of fans. And let's say those millions of fans just don't really care to engage with Marvel on, let's say, a X. And let's say you go on X, you're an editor, you're a producer, whatever you are, high up there at Marvel or DC, and you see all this interaction on X with people. Oh yeah, we love this. We love this new thing, this new idea you're pushing in your book. But yet the majority of the fans who are not really interacting with you on X or Facebook or Instagram, wherever you're seeing these interactions, the majority of your fans are like, yo, I'm not buying this. I don't like this. This is not what I want. But all you see is what you get on social media. That doesn't always, I'm not saying it never happens, but that doesn't always translate to what's going on in real life, what real geeks want to see. He concluded, you ask how things are made. That's how things are made. And usually about 20 people in a room making that arrangement, by the way. 20 people. Think about that. Making decisions for, now somebody has to run a company. I get this, but man, you would think that they would do, you know what's needed? More boots on the ground, especially in comic book companies. You need to have, like, I don't know how to do it. Like maybe let's call them comic book private investigators. Send people from these companies that will report directly to the higher ups and have them go around the country to small comic book shops in different areas and just look through comics and talk to people. I think if that were done, they would see really quickly, yo, we really don't have the heart of the geeks right now. We're messing up. Later, during a question and answer portion where viewers sent in super chats, the Dio was asked, Dan, do you think there's a chance that our beloved characters like Batman, Superman will be saved from the SJWs who have taken over? He briefly answered, look at the cycle of characters. Look at the world. Where have we been over the years? Look at how many times the characters have changed and moved on. What do you make of it? What do you make of the Dio's explanation for why woke ideology is rampant in DC and Marvel? Do you agree with his assertion? I have to say personally, I think I do agree with his assertion. I think there is a small group of people who are not consumers, who are not readers, who are not geeks, that have become CEOs, CFOs, et cetera, of these companies. They have no idea what's going on. Now, with some of these companies, you have legitimate comic book heads running these companies, but I don't know if they're just like puppets. Like what Jim Lee is head of what director of creation or something like that at DC. I can't remember what his exact title is. You would think somebody like Jim Lee would rein things in and make sure that good storylines are being put out, but he's just not doing that. Like I said, every now and again, something good will come out of DC. I'm enjoying the Wildcats reboot. I think it's actually good. But man, it's few and far between. So many books from DC and Marvel I will buy, and sometimes I'll get something that's decent where I'm like, oh, okay, I enjoyed this. But a lot of times I'll get books and I'm like, first of all, why is this artist drawing this mainstream comic book? They should have started somewhere smaller. And who wrote this storyline? It is not interesting. And I can see that there are ideas being shoved down my throat. And it just does not make for an interesting story. I think Dan is right. I believe that there are many people that are over these companies that are not fans. The comic book convention I went to a few weeks ago, I spoke with a bunch of creators that are fans of comics. Eric Jaline, what he started, he's a fan of comics. All the different independent comics that I have purchased within the past, I'd say 4 or 5 months, I can tell that the creators are fans of comic books, and it makes a huge difference. If you're going to run a company, you have to at least, in my humble opinion, if it's really going to succeed, have some kind of interest in a product you're putting out, whether you're a fan of that product or you just really believe in a product. But that's not the feeling I get from many people running these major content houses. What say you? So I had to come back and say this. I almost forgot. I almost let this video go by and, just this completely left my mind. I wonder if Dan DiDio is the person that's going to join the Rippaverse. That's my prediction before tomorrow. I might be completely wrong, but yeah, just a wild thought, right?